A gray feather floats gently down toward the hardwood floor of a quiet room, catching the dim afternoon light near an empty perch. For decades, we have looked at the African gray parrot in our homes and wondered if they are merely mirroring our voices, or if something deeper is happening behind those bright, analytical eyes. When we examine the legacy of the most famous avian research subject in history, a striking reality emerges, suggesting that Alex the parrot understood zero in the way humans traditionally define language. Yet exploring parrot language and animal intelligence reveals that this limitation does not diminish his brilliance. Instead, it exposes a profound misunderstanding of how the avian mind constructs its own reality. You look at your bird, expecting a human conversation, but the truth of what is happening inside that small skull is far more alien and far more magnificent than simple mimicry.
We often assume that for an animal to possess true intelligence, it must learn to speak our language on our terms. You hear a parakeet repeat a phrase or a cockatiel whistle a familiar tune, and you attribute it to a clever parlor trick, a superficial echo of human life. This perspective creates a false boundary, a belief that animals are trapped in a perpetual present, unable to form abstract thoughts without our vocabulary. We expect them to bridge the gap to our world, while we remain entirely blind to theirs. This bias long dictated the boundaries of cognitive science, leaving us to believe that a bird's brain was simply too primitive for true conceptual thought. But when we strip away our human expectations of speech, a different question emerges about what these creatures are actually doing when they communicate.
The foundation of this shift began not in a wild jungle, but in a laboratory at Purdue University in 1977. Dr. Irene Pepperberg chose a 1-year-old African gray parrot from a pet store, naming him Alex, an acronym for Avian Learning Experiment. For the next 30 years, this single bird dismantled decades of scientific dogma regarding the limits of the avian brain. Instead of using traditional conditioning techniques, which reward simple repetition, Pepperberg utilized the model rival technique, where the parrot observed two humans interacting and competing for an object. Alex was not trained to salivate or press a lever. He was invited to participate in a social structure. Through this method, he began to demonstrate an understanding of categories, identifying over 50 different objects, 7 colors, and 5 distinct shapes.
By the 1990s, the data coming out of the Harvard and Brandeis University studies forced a complete reassessment of animal cognition. Alex demonstrated the ability to interlock concepts, looking at a tray of mixed items and correctly identifying which object was both green and made of wood. He was not just labeling, he was sorting reality through multiple abstract lenses simultaneously. This milestone proved that his vocalizations were tied to internal mental representations, not just mechanical reflexes. When he asked for a nut, he expected a nut, and if handed a piece of banana instead, he would refuse it or throw it back at the researcher. The bird had formed a precise expectation of the future based on his own vocal expression. Yet the true anomaly of his intelligence would only show itself when he was faced with absolute nothingness. To understand why Alex understood zero, we must look at how the concept of nothing is handled by the brain. In studies published by Dr. Pepperberg in the journal Animal Cognition in 2005, Alex was regularly asked to identify differences between two objects. When presented with two identical blue blocks, he was asked what was different. The correct human response is none or nothing. For an animal, realizing that a lack of difference is itself a category requires a massive cognitive leap. Alex did not possess a pre-existing word for zero, so he did something entirely unexpected. He repurposed the word none, which he had used in other contexts, and applied it to describe the absence of a property. This brings us to the core of the mystery regarding language.
Alex did not understand human syntax, grammar, or the infinite generative power of human linguistics. He did not construct narrative stories or ask philosophical questions about his own existence. In the strict definition of linguistics, he did not speak a language. A study from the University of Lincoln, published in 2014, reminds us that domestic birds process communication through highly specialized social bonds, not formal grammar structures. Alex was using labels as tools to manipulate his environment and his human flock. He understood the functional utility of the sounds, categorizing the world into shapes, colors, and materials to get what he wanted. Pattern interrupt. Direct question. Does this lack of formal language mean he was less intelligent?
The answer is quite the opposite. By realizing that he achieved these complex tasks without human language, we discover that his intelligence is entirely independent of our way of thinking. A report in Trends in Cognitive Sciences from 2021 highlights that the avian brain houses a densely packed arrangement of neurons, allowing for high-level processing power without a human-like neocortex. Alex was doing advanced cognitive work using an evolutionary pathway that diverged from mammals over 300 million years ago. He was calculating, sorting, and assessing his social world through a mind designed for the canopy, adapted brilliantly to a human laboratory. He was not a human trapped in a bird's body. He was a profound expression of a non-human mind.
This shifts how we look at the companion birds living inside our own homes today. When a parrot sits quietly on a perch in your living room, its eyes turning to watch your every movement, it is not an empty vessel waiting for instruction. It is an active observer running a complex parallel processing system that evaluates your routines, your micro-expressions, and your vocal tones. A study from the University of Vienna in 2018 showed that parrots possess advanced emotional contagion and can mirror the stress or calm of their human keepers. They are reading the unspoken emotional landscape of the room with extreme accuracy, utilizing an evolutionary intelligence built entirely on intense social cooperation. Alapuric beings travel by plane? A real visitor is waiting for you. The true depth of this relationship becomes clear when we recognize that these birds view us as part of their dynamic social network. They do not see a master. They see a flock member, a partner, or a rival. Their vocalizations are attempts to negotiate space, resources, and affection within that shared system. When they use words, they are mapping our strange, heavy sounds onto their internal template of desire and association. This realization demands a higher level of empathy from us. It reminds us that we are sharing our living spaces with an ancient form of consciousness, one that perceives color, shape, and connection with a clarity that rivals our own, despite lacking our words. The bird on your shoulder is a traveler from a completely different cognitive universe. Think back to that quiet afternoon room, the empty perch, and the single gray feather resting on the floor. When you look at your bird now, the urge to hear them mimic human phrases fades into something much deeper. You no longer see a creature failing to speak like a human. You see a creature succeeding magnificently at being a bird. Alex's final words to Dr. Pepperberg before his sudden death in 2007 were, "You be good. See you tomorrow. I love you." He used the labels he had been given to close the day, maintaining the vital social bond that kept his world secure until his very last breath. The legacy of this research changes our relationship with the entire natural world around us. It shatters the mirror of our own ego, showing us that intelligence does not require a human tongue to be real, deep, and beautifully complex. The silent communication happening in your home every single day is full of meaning, waiting for you to listen with your eyes instead of your ears. By understanding the true nature of their minds, we learn to appreciate them for who they are, not what we want them to repeat.
we find ourselves living alongside a quiet, observant intellect that understands its world perfectly, even if it defines nothingness entirely differently than we do. If you wish to explore how these remarkable cognitive networks operate outside the walls of our homes, you can look directly into your own backyard. The complex social intelligence we observed in Alex is not unique to exotic parrots. It thrives on a massive scale in the wild birds that watch us from the trees every single morning. To see how these complex communication systems function in the wild, click on the next video, where we examine the hidden language and neighborhood networks of the common backyard crow.